Hey there, Jenna Picor here, the host of the Faces of Grand Prairie podcast. And it's been a while. This is my first episode to put out in about 3 years. And I kind of took a little hiatus. I was having it was becoming more and more complicated with the equipment that I had to get interviews recorded. And so I finally was able to find and start using the podcast booth at the Epic in Grand Prairie. And that has proven to be such a great resource for me. And so this is my first episode to record in that booth, and there's going to be several to come. And I have to apologize because I'm interviewing City Councilman Junior Ezeonu, and we actually did this interview before Christmas, but the equipment that we use is so wonderful, and we did kind of a long podcast, and so I've needed to get my editing software and all kinds of things going, so it's been longer than I would have liked it to be to put this episode out, but I'm really excited that he agreed to talk to me. He's such a pleasure. And so just a little bit about Junior. He is an at-large city council member for Grand Prairie. He was elected in 2021, and he is a recent graduate of the University of Texas in Arlington. He is a political science major. And he is the youngest city councilman in Grand Prairie's history to be elected to city council, which is so interesting. He and I talk about all kinds of different politics topics and all kinds of things. He's so interesting, and I can't wait to have him back on. But without further ado, here is Councilman Junior Ezeonu.
I remember when they first built this whole building, they had that upstairs recording studio, which they still do have the upstairs recording studio. So like we're just starting. So for those that have never been here to use any of the facilities like this, upstairs is more like a recording studio for like if you wanted to record a band or something like that. But I said, Mayor Jensen was the first one that I asked. I said, I'm going to do this podcast. Would you be interested in just talking to me? And he said, sure, no problem. So we recorded up there. Then I recorded Michelle, who was the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce at the time. And but it was great. It was awesome. But this used to be like a radio. Like they were trying to do it like as a radio broadcast, and it just didn't work out that way. But this is part of the reason I have not done a recording is because I have not had a place like this. So you're the first person in 3 years that I've talked to.
Well, I'm honored.
Yes! And I'm so glad that you are. But setting up sound and doing all that stuff and trying to find a place and then editing it, and getting sound equipment that's like reasonably good is not the easiest thing in the world. So I said, this is $25 an hour, just for anybody that's interested. $25 an hour. You can pay extra for a sound engineer, but if you're interested in doing any type of like podcast or interview or something, this is a good place for it.
100%. I agree. I love it.
Yeah. You come up here a lot.
I work out here like 3 to 5 days a week.
Do you really?
Yeah. I love working out here.
Do you like work out with a trainer?
No, just myself or friends. It's always encouraging to work out with some friends because they'll push you.
Yeah.
So me and my boys might come out here and go hop on the track, run. We'll be benching, doing incline, just trying to get in shape, doing the Stairmaster. It's so funny because we'll have GPPD officers that are out here working out with us, and we'll be doing the Stairmaster together, and we'll hop off saying, my goodness, the Stairmaster will work you out.
Yes, it will.
It will work you out.
I can't do it very long.
I do 15 minutes, and then I cool down for 2.
And are you quick at it? Are you slow?
I go up to level 9 or 10. Once I hit level 9, once I hit level 10, I got to come back down. Level 10 kicks my butt because I'll start at 5, and every 2 minutes to 3 minutes, I'm going to go up 1 level. So I hit 9 or 10, and then I cool down at 6.
It's hard. It is very, very hard. But I will tell you, like that, going up and down stairs is very good, like, test about how good or how in shape that you actually are.
Yeah.
But trying to do that for a long time, it's tough.
Oh yeah, it'll work you out.
It does. But you come up here a lot even for non-workout related reasons. Like,
definitely.
Tell everybody what you're just talking about the showdown.
Yeah, so annually we do this community basketball game between teenagers and the police department with the goal of building bridges within our community, especially with younger men. And we're trying to get women to play too. It's supposed to be co-ed, but we haven't got any girls to play yet. But the game is just to foster that community relationship between young men, especially young men of color, with the police department, showing them that the cops are just like you, at the same time showing the cops that these young men are just like you as well, building that relationship. So we've done it for 3 years now. This summer, we beat the cops. Yeah, we had to beat them.
Was that the first time?
We beat them the first year, and they whooped our butt last year. The cops came out. I mean, they were almost dunking on us.
Did they send in ringers?
It was embarrassing. Let me just say it was embarrassing. So this year I had to go and I had to recruit, because you got to keep in mind I only have teenagers, so they have teenagers that are in high school between the ages of 14 to 18 against grown men.
So do y'all get to practice?
Oh, yeah. We try out. We have.
Do you really?
I promote it on social media, and then I come up here and I find some young men and I say, I want you to try out. How old are you? I want you to try out. And I literally hold 2 sets of tryouts and then 4 practices before the game.
Oh my God. So are you the coach?
I'm the coach.
Do you also participate? Or do you just coach?
I just coach.
Okay.
In the future, I might play, but for me, it's fun I've always wanted to be a coach. Growing up, I played basketball, loved basketball, but I always wanted to be a coach. So this game kind of fulfills a childhood dream of like bringing young, teenagers together, coaching them and trying to lead them to victory through their talent is just my behind the scenes tactics, if you want to call it that.
So what made you stop? Like, what derailed that as a career?
So I wanted to play in the NBA. Had a bad knee injury on my left knee, broke my tibia and ruptured my patellar tendon back in high school. It was really bad. It kind of stunted my growth a little bit as well, but I was close to the end of my growing years, I guess you could say. So that stopped me. I tried to come back, but it was very difficult, and I wasn't the same as I was before. But I still had the goal to play basketball, and I still play basketball for fun. But I definitely became a very, a very big lover of government and politics during high school.
Interesting.
Since I was a kid, loved government, loved politics, thought it was interesting, but I still wanted to play in the NBA. But high school is when I was like, okay, no, this is the path I will take to make a difference. Because for me, it was always about making a difference. Like with basketball, my dream was not just to play in the NBA, but to set up my foundation, have the Junior Ezeonu Foundation that would give back to different communities across this country and help, especially like poor kids that came from nothing, and help them and see that they can one day become something greater than themselves. But I translated that into my political career. I'm not able to not just help kids, but help communities in my community, in the city that I love.
It's so interesting because as a real estate agent, one of the things that I learned is you do the thing, like I went to a top producer panel one time and we were talking about how do you get new people to be clients, like how do you market yourself? And the things that people were doing just was not speaking to me personally. But then I went and I listened to a guy talk about how all he did was he had parties in his own neighborhood. And I was like, well, I like to do parties. I like to have events. So I incorporated the things that I loved into what I was doing for a living. It sounds like this is the same thing for you. It's like this gives you an opportunity, if you're creative, to like use some of your talents to do other things, which is good because that's genuine, that's authentic. And that's part of the reason I wanted to talk to you personally, because it comes through in your social media. Like what you're doing all the time is you can clearly see that you like doing it.
Yeah.
It's things that interest you also, which also makes it, because being a city politician takes a lot of time. You better like doing what you're doing.
Exactly.
So the things that you're doing, you seem to really enjoy. So this gives me a little bit more insight into why you do things like that. That's a great idea.
You're 100% right. I think in my way of governing and serving the city, I said, I want to be myself. I mean, my campaign when I first ran, I was myself. I don't want to be someone that people tell me you got to be like this guy or you got to emulate this. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take certain parts of what you have done and what you do that I like, but I'm going to be Junior Ezeonu. because that's who I am. I can't fake it or act like someone I'm not. And if I do, it's going to come off as inauthentic.
Yep.
And people will see right through it. So I said, I'm going to have fun doing this work because this is work, but I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to have fun. And my goal is to bring people with me. I want people to get engaged. I want them to see that government does play a role in your day-to-day life, especially the local government.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, it's the most direct impact you have on your day-to-day life is through the local government, city council, school boards.
And there's so many different elected positions that people don't even realize. But one of the things that I love that you're also doing on your Facebook, you're doing a lot of civics lessons. Like I just watched one where you're talking about the Electoral College. How do we elect a president? I love that too, because I don't think that our elected officials do enough education about like, how do you learn about civics? Yeah. But it seems to me like you like the mechanics of it too, not just being a politician. Mm-hmm. You actually like explaining how the government works, but you went to school for that too.
Exactly. I definitely did, but people need to know.
They do.
They need to know, and it's so disappointing how many folks, both young and seasoned, don't understand how our federal, state, county, and local governments work.
That's what started this podcast, actually. Like during the pandemic, I interviewed Rodney Anderson because I didn't understand how county judges, like we had Dallas County Jenkins was, he was our county, but I'm like, but he's not a judge. Like, how does this work? How does this, and so I had Rodney come on and he explained it. He's like, well, a lot of the remnants from Texas are because of how we established ourselves and we are a nation, this and that. So it's complicated, but it's interesting. Like, who has jurisdiction to do what thing, and how do you have this power and all that stuff? So, like, going through it as at UTA where you graduated, is it different from what you learned in college versus doing it on a day-to-day basis? I
love that question because yes, you know how they say high school doesn't prepare you for college, and middle school doesn't prepare you for high school. In college, in political science, for example, we don't study the local level. We study solely the federal, the state, and bits and pieces of county and judicial government. That's it. The local city council, school board, none of that comes up.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, and I wondered. I was like, why did we never study local government in college? But we just didn't. We were solely focused on federal, state, county a bit, and judicial.
Do you feel like the people that are going to get degrees at college are trying to become politicians, or do you think that they're trying to become like campaign? Like, what do you think they're trying? Yeah, like lawyers. Really?
A lot of them are doing poli-sci to go into law school.
Interesting.
And some that don't end up not going to law school will go and work for advocacy organizations. Whether if they're conservative, they may go work for the NRA. They may work for the Heritage Foundation. If they're liberal, they may work for Emily's List, Planned Parenthood, or some liberal aligned organization. So, but they go in. A lot of people trying to go the pre-law route and go to law school.
That's so interesting. So how many people did you go to school with that actually wanted to run for local government?
Maybe 2%.
Really?
It was never a conversation. The majority of folks I went to school with didn't want to run for office. They wanted to go to law school.
So how many of our elected politicians locally do you think have gone through any type of training about what their position would actually do? Like
before they ran?
Yeah.
5%.
Isn't that so crazy?
Most don't because and a lot of people that end up serving are folks that are like successful business people or served in like if you're a school board member, served in education for decades or a decade or two and want to provide public service in a field that they understand very well. So a lot of or would I guess state and county governments, some of them have been lawyers for some time, have done the work, and now they want to pursue another form of service outside of their law practice.
So when you went through school, what was your end goal? Like, what did you want to do in politics?
Oh, guaranteed. In high school, I decided I wanted to run for office one day. That's when I decided during that 2016 election, not even the general election, it was the primary that I was like, I'm going to run for office one day.
Really?
And my plan was to run by the age of 26, 27. I didn't plan on running at 21, turning 22. But that was God that, kind of pushed me in that direction and gave me the strength to get through it. But I decided I wanted to run for office when I was 17 years old in high school.
Wow.
In college, that's when I started trying to decide how would I do that. I started looking. I was like, how much money do I need to raise? How many doors will I have to knock? And all of that. But yeah, during college, that's when I decided for sure I wanted to run. And it's been a blessing. It has been a blessing. I can't tell you how much you learn being a young man, growing up in this community, but being able to make decisions that impact people's lives, but having the humility to understand that you don't know everything and that you need help and that you got to go to the people that have served before you to gain that wisdom. And that's what I did when I got on council. We had a meeting with myself, the former city manager, Tom Hart, the current city manager at that time, Steve Dye, and the mayor. And they asked me, what's the first thing you want to do now that you're a council member? Literally like a couple weeks after I got elected. And I told them, the first thing I'm going to do is listen. I said, I want to listen so I can learn. And I want to learn so I can be able to serve. But if I go in headstrong thinking I know everything, not only will I fail, but our community will fail as well. And my goal is to put the community first, put the people first, because the people gave me the opportunity to serve. And that's how I look at it. I'm no greater than anybody else, because if I don't do my job, I can be removed like that.
That's very true. But I will tell you, like, and I'm not trying to get any points here, but I will say it comes across that way. Like I've watched you, because first of all, you were new to politics, you were young, and I was like, I'm really curious to see how this is going to work. But I could tell immediately there was something that I could tell that Mayor Jensen, especially, like, you were doing a lot of stuff with him in the beginning, especially. You were going places with him, and I was like, he's listening. Yeah. And he's a good person to listen to about all this, politics stuff, especially locally, but especially when you've been raised in the community that you're in. Especially with him, because he's been here so long. He'll hear about it. He hears about it all the time. But I'm like, Junior's listening to him. I can tell. But you have that attitude. You have that service mentality. You do so much stuff in the community. Like, you're doing town halls all the time. You have people, you're around people that elected you. And since you're at large, which maybe you can give us a little civics lesson on what that means. Exactly. But, like, you have to be a part of a lot of different parts of the city, because you're not just in charge of one district, you're in charge of the whole city. So it comes across. I just want you to know that. Thank you. I can tell. And I pay attention to all that stuff, but it comes across very, very well like that. So I appreciate that very much. But tell people you're at large, so tell people what that means. And how many people on city council are at large? Great question. So in city governments, there's two different ways, I guess you can say three, because you can mix them, ways of setting up a city council or an alderman board, as some other cities call it. You can have single member districts, which are where a representative will represent a specific set of neighborhoods, clusters of neighborhoods, of communities, instead of the whole city. So you'll have like one representative that represents the northeast quadrant, one that represents the southeast, northwest, southwest, central. Our city has it to where we split it. We have 6 individual single member districts and then 2 at-large districts, meaning that at-larges, they're elected citywide. They represent the whole city from North, Central, and South Grand Prairie. Those are all of our constituents, 2 of them, myself and Bessie Adams. And then we also have the mayor, who's elected at large as well. That's the other thing we have to explain. On our city council, we have a council manager system, meaning that, or some people call it a weak mayor system, meaning that the mayor is the presiding chair of the city council, and the city manager does a lot of the day-to-day mechanisms of running the city, not the mayor. And the mayor also does not have veto power on the city council. Interesting. The mayor has 1 vote, just like every other council member. But if you live in a city like Houston or New York, LA, I don't think they do, maybe LA, but Houston, New York, for example, Chicago as well, their mayors are strong mayor systems, meaning that their mayors can veto what the city council proposes and passes, unless the city council overrides that veto with a 2/3 majority vote. So what's the benefits and cons of both systems? Great question. The benefit for a strong mayor system is if someone runs for mayor, it gives them power. Mm-hmm. Because with the council manager system, the mayor does not have the power
that they would have in a strong mayor system. The benefit of a council manager is that it makes it more fair amongst the entire council, and you don't have a mayor that just thinks he's a king, almost. The drawback for a council manager system is, I mean, if you run for mayor, you spend all that money that you have to raise and put in all that work, and have a lot of times people blame you for things because you're the mayor, not understanding that you're just one vote. You don't have the executive branch authority to stop things as you could in a strong mayor system. So that's a drawback. And then the other drawback, if it's a strong mayor system, is that, well, I mean, you kind of have too much power. Some may say you have too much power. It's like being a mayor on that level of government is like being the president in a strong mayor system. In our form of government, the mayor is more like the Speaker of the House.
Like he runs the meetings.
Exactly.
So y'all run, so this is so boring, but it's so interesting to me. It might be more interesting to other people too. But like y'all run on Robert's Rules of Order.
Yes, ma'am.
So y'all have, so basically if you go to a city council meeting, Mayor Jensen is the one that's basically running the agenda.
He's the presiding chair.
That's right. He'll call the votes, he'll do all that stuff, and he'll introduce things, but he's not the one that's making the ultimate final decision. No. So, I mean, it would seem like a weak mayor system would be better for the city members, like the actual people, to have more of a voice to all of you guys.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's what it would seem like to me anyway.
No, it is. I mean, a weak mayor system just gives the city as a whole more power. It decentralizes the power. That's the best way to do it.
Right.
It decentralizes the power to where the power is shared. In a strong mayor system, the power is concentrated more with the mayor. Since the mayor can unilaterally block something, and then you need a 2/3 majority vote, which may be difficult depending on the contours and the makeup of a city council. So that's why, like, I'm a supporter of council manager systems, but if I want to be a mayor, I want to have a strong mayor system.
Right, it's good for the
exactly. For the mayor. Oh yeah, of course they would want a strong mayor system.
Sure.
They have an advantage.
Unless it's going poorly.
Exactly. Then they want it to be decentralized. Let's all share the blame.
Then they want to give you a civics lesson about, let me tell you how this all works.
Exactly.
So have you been surprised, or in one way or the other, about how little or how much feedback you get from the community about things? Like, do you hear more from people than you thought you would, or do you hear less from people than you thought you would?
I think you don't hear as much because city government is not sexy. It's not attractive, and there's not that much money invested in it. So there's not as much news or outrage over different issues, because the federal and state, there's so much money that's invested into those elections. There's so much investment, there's so much attention, so much media coverage. So that's one reason why we don't have as much. But what I do is I actively look for that input.
That's another thing you do that I see.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want y'all to tell me, because I can't know if we're doing a good job or if we're making mistakes or if we have oversight somewhere unless you guys say, hey, this is what's going on. And that's what I love about my job, because I find it fun going to people and be like, hey, what's going on? What is your opinion on this issue? What do you want to see improved? Voice your opinion. Let me know. Yeah. So you get more responses when you go out there fishing for it. Because that's what I do, because I know on this level of government, I got to be the one that goes out there and informs people and asks them for their thoughts, instead of people coming and directly telling me. Unless there's a controversial issue, there's apartments being put up that folks don't want. There's a
that's probably the number one thing.
Apartments, of course. And we'll come back to what's causing that. Or there's a development.
At the grocery store.
We're lacking grocery stores, or there's vape shops and liquor stores. People will voice their opinion on that, because those things affect them, and they feel it and they see it, which they're right. It is an issue. Sure. But yeah, so we hear more feedback on that. But at the same time, I love our residents in the city, because we have several that will email us saying, hey, I don't know if anybody's telling you this, but we appreciate the work that you're doing. Or to send you a Facebook message or Instagram, Twitter, you're doing a good job. Thank you for serving. And I can't tell you, you get a lot of those messages, a lot more than you expect, because the people appreciate the work. Those that are really paying attention, they appreciate the work.
They do. And I will say, like, if I'm ever even slightly critical, I will hear about it. you know that they do a very good job. And I'm like, yes, I do know that, but I do know that they're all like, y'all are all adults. Y'all are here. And like,
and you should be critical. You should.
Yeah.
I support that.
That is on record. Did y'all hear that?
Yes. I want everybody, if you see something that's not going on as it should, something that's wrong, voice a complaint, because we cannot get better if everybody passes on our back and says you're doing a great job.
That's right.
No, we have to be criticized. We have to hear the constructive criticism. Make sure it's constructive, of course.
Sure, of course.
But we need that. We need those voices of dissent. I hate government where folks feel that you have to just bow down to the king and kiss the ring and tell him he's the best. No, we are servants. And being a servant means that you have a right to be criticized and admonished and told to correct something.
I'm curious your opinion on, like, how do you feel like the removal of local newspapers, how do you think that that's affected, like, how, especially people in elected positions in city government, how do you think that that's affected things?
Well, our city, what I'm about to say is not directly attached to our city, but what has happened with the lack of local media, local news, is that there's less information that's being disseminated to residents. There's oversight of the council meetings and what's going on at City Hall, but there's significantly less. People are less informed, and also it leads, not in this community, but in certain communities, to elected officials doing outlandish things to get media attention.
Oh, explain.
To get in front of the news, to get in front of the cameras, and to help them in political campaigns, political elections. That's what happens when you don't have a regular media source in the community that is informing the constituents and the voting population, that sometimes people will go and seek that attention by doing something, whether it's good or bad, and normally it's bad, to get in front of people. Yeah, because they want to get those clicks, and they want you to go and type their name up and see what they're doing, what they've done. So that's another issue that comes out of the decimation of local news.
I hope to see that come back. Like, when I started this podcast, it was really when I started this podcast, I was raised in this community, and I had access to people just because I knew them. Like, I went to high school with them or whatever. And so I was like, I talk to people on a regular basis. But what's interesting is, like, I didn't know you growing up. I didn't know you before you ran but I asked you to talk to me, and you said yes. And that happens all the time. I would just go to people that are elected officials, and one thing that I wish that people in this city specifically understood is we have more access to our elected officials than a lot of other places do. If I ask y'all to show up, most of the time y'all do. Yeah. If I say, hey, can you come to National Night Out? Hey, can you do this? You pretty much y'all all do it if your schedule allows it. But people have more access to their elected officials than they think that they do. Y'all don't look at yourselves as like celebrities, whereas there's some people in, like, especially federal government levels that, like, seem so far distant, removed. Y'all are not like that. So, like, one of the reasons I started this podcast was to make y'all more accessible to people that just assumed that y'all were not touchable, or like you couldn't talk to you. Literally, it takes a phone call or a message on Facebook or an email. Yeah. That's all I had to do for you to come talk to me today.
A Facebook message. That's all it took.
Yes. And I was like, I didn't have to tell you what I was going to ask you. You didn't ask me. You didn't say, can we not talk about this? It was just like, sure, I'd love to come talk to you. And I knew you would. That's why I asked you. Because, you know, but I do that to a lot of people. And so if you are in this city, you're new to the city, you don't know a lot of people, just reach out to your local elected official. Say, hey, I just want to know who you are. I want you to know who I am. Invite them to a neighborhood, gathering. Because I know you especially, but a lot of our council members love doing stuff like that. And so it's really important, though, to just kind of get to know who's in charge of that, because y'all are in charge of a lot of stuff that affects our lives every day.
Yes.
City council especially is like, the quality of our roads, and y'all. Well, another thing that we could talk about is how y'all appoint commissioners to be a part of all these commissions in our city. I think that's one of the coolest things ever. So talk to us about that. Like, how many different commissions does Grand Prairie have? Do you have trouble finding people to serve on those commissions? And, like, what are some of the things that you're looking for right now for people to do on them? So.
So we have about 15 boards and commissions. The majority of them, like 13 or 14 out of the 15, are appointed by individual city council members. There's one or two where the mayor makes all the appointments, and it goes by consensus. I think it's the Civil Service Commission and one other commission. But every other commission, each council member has one position that they get to nominate, and then the city council as a whole will vote on it. Normally, they're unanimous consent votes, and people get appointed. But we choose resident. You have to live in the city. We choose a resident from the city for these different boards. There's the Animal Advisory Commission. There's Public Health Advisory Commission. There's Planning and Zoning Commission, which deals with whenever people are trying to build anything in the city, it has to come through planning and zoning. We have
Commission on Aging.
Commission on Aging. We have a lot
Parks
of Parks and Rec Board. We have so many different boards and commissions that help get our residents involved in the community, allow them to be decision makers, and advise the city council, and sometimes just make a decision on their own. There's a commission that actually has authority over the city council. It's the Zoning Board of Adjustments Commission.
Really?
Because after the city council passes something, and if there's still some issues with the zoning of it, it'll go to that board called ZBA, and they'll make a final decision, because they actually are connected to the county government, not even the city, which is crazy, but we appoint them. So they make a direct decision that city council can't even override. So it's really impactful and a great teaching point and experience for residents that live in the city that want to be more involved, and for some that want to run for office one day.
Sure.
To have that on your resume, that you've served your city in this volunteer role, because it's all volunteer. So I would recommend to anyone that does want to get involved to apply. Most of the commissions have 3-year terms. So whenever a council member is up for re-election, like I'll be back up in 2027, my commissioner's terms will expire in June of 2027. So I have to either reappoint them or appoint some other people. And generally we have folks that apply for almost every position, but you gotta also be careful, because I always tell people, before you appoint anybody, call them. Find out who they are. It's always easier to appoint people that you have met or reached out to you personally, asking you to appoint them, and you call them, do a small little informative interview, just to know who they are, and then you can appoint them. But right now, I mean, for anybody that's listening, I'm trying to get somebody to fill my Keep Grand Prairie Beautiful Commission seat. I have a seat available. That's the only seat I have available right now. So if anybody would love to serve on that commission, which deals with a lot of the community cleanups, the big event, Clean Prairie, our fall sweeps, and helps just beautify our community and remove the trash from the sidewalks, from the roads, from the public right-of-ways, feel free to reach out to me. Shoot me a text on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and I'd love to appoint you after doing our interview.
Yeah, and you have to fill out an application with an intent to that you want to do it. You don't necessarily have to know who you're going to be serving for, or like what you're going to be serving in. Like if what you want to do is just to try one out, then just say, I'm interested in doing whatever's available. And then maybe I think that you get to like pick a top three.
Top three.
Yeah. And so I served on the Housing and the Community Improvement Commission because I'm a real estate agent, and that seemed interesting to me. I did not realize that part of that was also to help disseminate federal funds to our nonprofits.
CDBG.
Yes, it's very cool. I did not realize that, and that was a really cool surprise.
Y'all are actually the ones that scored the different nonprofits and sent it over, which is incredible. The CDBG's Community Development Block Grant funding, which we use to support nonprofits that are doing work in our city. And her commission that she used to serve on was the commission that would literally score each nonprofit's application. And I think y'all have like interviews with them where they come and present, they do presentations, and following that, y'all decide which nonprofits should get this funding, and 99% of the time, the council supports y'all's recommendations.
Yes, and the reason commissions are important, and this is like for anybody interested in like the mechanics of meetings and all this stuff. Robert's Rules of Order generally says that if you have an advisory committee, there can be one, like, because y'all can't be experts in every single thing that goes on. Mm-hmm. If you serve in any type of board, you can't. It's impossible. So, but what you can do is identify people that can only be specific to that particular topic. So this is what helps y'all make decisions. And so there's a lot of different mechanics involved with city government. So for us, we have the time. We would meet once a month, but then every year we would have all the nonprofits that were interested in getting that type of funding come to us and give us a presentation about who they served, what they did, if they had been around last year, what has been your record as far as like how have you affected members of our community. And that particular grant only goes to local Grand Prairie nonprofits that only serve the city of Grand Prairie, because the block grant is designed for local funding. So if you were a nonprofit that existed here that served a lot of different communities, it didn't mean that you don't matter. It's just we wanted ones that served. So like what's one? I can't even think off the top of my head. Like the Parks and Rec, the summer camps, those are local. They would come and present to us. And then we would say, okay, who do we think, when we would score them, it was, how is this money going to affect the most amount of people? So who do we think is going to affect the most? And then it would kind of go down and filter down according to that. And then we would give y'all our recommendations about how we thought y'all should vote on money. And that's how you voted. Yeah. So it's really, really interesting. Now, if you're going to talk about like a sexy community, it's going to be Parks and Rec. Yeah. Because they're the ones that they're the ones that help build this place, the Epic. Like this was actually a specialized group within the Parks and Rec board, because when Tom Hart and oh my gosh, now I can't even think of his name.
He passed away, but
yes. Oh my gosh, that is so, I cannot believe I forgot.
And
he
was the Parks
yes, when they
director for a long time.
Yes, Rick Harold. Oh my gosh.
Yes, yeah.
They had a vision for all this stuff. This was part of that vision, and so what they did was they took not people on Parks and Rec, but they took people separate to that, just to help talk about the Epic Rec Center. And so their names are on the out front, and the people that help with that, they get to go every year to the VIP for the Prairie Lights. So if you're interested in being a part of all of that, Parks and Rec is where to be. If you want to talk about apartments, planning and zoning is where you want to be, because they're the ones that hear all of those things.
Yes.
So you said you wanted to go back and talk about apartments.
Let's talk about apartments. So on the campaign trail in both elections that I've run, I was reelected this May. Now I'm serving for another 3 years. Thanks be to God for that. But something that always comes up is concern about apartments. Folks in our community are tired of all the multifamily being built, and we understand that. But there's two things that are at play. One is called zoning. A lot of these properties that are being built have been zoned multifamily for decades, going back to the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. Council members and the mayor cannot revoke that zoning unless the property owner comes to the city council and says, hello, council, I would like to change the zoning from multifamily to single family. I don't want to build apartments. I want to build single family homes. And then the council must approve that.
They must?
Oh, my bad. Not must. The council can approve that.
Okay, gotcha.
But if the property owner does not come to the city council asking us to change their zoning, we have no right to change the zoning. Because in Texas is a property rights state. Property has rights. Dirt has rights. And you cannot revoke. Because, I mean, if you think about it, it wouldn't be fair. Someone bought this land for multifamily, and that's what it was zoned as, and then telling them later, hey, you can't build multifamily here. Well, it's not fair. I paid all this money for this thing, and it was valued at this price because what it could do. Then the second thing is people got to keep in mind. I know we love Epic Central now. We love eating at Vidora, the Finch, Loop 9 Barbecue. We have all these other restaurants lined up and activities. We have Andretti's, Bass Pro, Top Golf is coming next year. A lot of this did not just come because of the city's vision. It's part of our vision. We advocated, we gave incentives, but also a lot of it is because of the apartments. Because a lot of these developers that bring these restaurants and retail shops and activity, entertainment locations want people that live nearby to go and patronize their businesses. So there's a word in real estate. You would probably know the phrase is like, what is it? Rooftops bring something. But rooftops bring these different businesses, and they want to come in once they see that there's a population that will serve their business.
Mm-hmm. And that can actually, like, if you're going to work at all these places, you know, typically that's the people that work at these places live in these apartments as well.
Yep.
So like, yeah, I mean, and it's a double-edged sword. You have the traffic, you have all that stuff, and then you have the, you know, the schools, and if they have kids and all that. But it also brings sales tax revenue, which is one of the biggest things that a lot of people don't realize about Grand Prairie specifically, is like that's part of the plan. I talked to Greg Geisner about this. You know, it's like all that sales tax revenue that comes from all these businesses helps offset some of the cost of like what property taxes would pay for.
Exactly. So. In a lot of cities, let's say towns that are just growing in parts of the North Texas area, DFW Metroplex, folks are paying a ridiculous amount of money in property taxes. Mm-hmm. And the reason is, as these towns are growing, the only way that the city government can pay for what they're doing and what they're trying to do as they look at their 5 to 10 year comprehensive plans for the future is through taxing their homeowners. Mm-hmm. Because they don't have the retail shops, they don't have the industrial warehouses, they don't have the businesses to take up part of that tax burden. So who's going to be the one taking it up? It's going to be the homeowners that bought their house there and are building, you know, are raising a family and are, you know, they planted roots. It sucks. So we're lucky to live in an established city, a city that's been here for some time, that can reduce property tax rates, that can increase the homestead exemption, because we know we'll be able to fund what we need to fund here because of all the businesses that have come in, because of the multifamily that we have, the multifamily stock. It helps us be able to give our homeowners a property tax savings, or just not increase it to the rate that others are.
Yeah, and I feel like I did a whole episode about this, but maybe I didn't do an episode of Face of Grand Prairie. Maybe I did a YouTube but talking about your property tax bill, like in the city of Grand Prairie, your property tax bill, the city portion of it is actually a very small percentage of your entire property tax bill. If you're interested in knowing about property tax bills, your school board is going to be the one that determines the majority of that property tax bill. But in our city, it's the city municipal services are actually not a very huge percentage of that.
I believe it's like 25 to 28%.
Yeah.
The school district is
less than that, I think, even.
School district is over 50%.
It is.
It's close to 55 to 60% of your property tax bill.
Now, y'all get to set the property tax rate, don't you?
Yes, ma'am.
But only for your portion.
Only for the city government's portion. So whenever we're working to reduce the rate and increase the homestead exemption, that is solely for city government taxes.
Right.
The county has their own. The school district has their own.
Yeah. So let's talk about one of the pieces of news I just saw recently is that we're annexing more land.
We are.
Is it true that Grand Prairie is the longest city in the United States, mile-wise?
People say that. They say that. I have not seen the legal documentation, but I mean, if you look at our city on the map, we're very long and skinny. We're not wide. We're just... If you start from the most northern part of Grand Prairie near Irving and drive all the way to our part of Grand Prairie that's now in Ellis and Johnson County, it can take you 40 minutes to 45 minutes without traffic.
I know.
If you have traffic, my lord, it may be an hour and 20 minutes.
So what did y'all just annex? Or what are y'all going to annex?
So we're currently in the process. We just annexed a portion of this area that's going to be called Goodland. You may have seen some of the ads on social media. Goodland is south of 287 and 360. It's a major... have you heard of Heartland near Forney?
Yes, I have.
So Heartland is
I hope somebody buy a house there.
Exactly. So Heartland is a community that's not annexed into Forney, but people will say, I live in Heartland. Goodland is the same way. Parts of it is being annexed into the city of Grand Prairie, and we annex some of the industrial areas over there currently, because over time we're going to annex more of the residential over time, but we annex some of the industrial, help us bring in some sales tax as well from those industrial plants. But that area is actually Grand Prairie. So it's within the Grand Prairie Extraterritorial Jurisdiction, or ETJ. And over the next 20 years, we're going to annex all of that land. The only problem, and this is why federal government is important, and to have a good relationship with our congressmen and senators, as well as with the post office in this sense, is that Goodland, people that live down there, their addresses say Midlothian and Venus.
Oh my gosh.
But they're going to be paying taxes over time. They're going to be paying taxes to the city of Grand Prairie and their water bill will be going to the city of Grand Prairie. But their zip code will be Midlothian and Venus.
Oh, gosh.
Which confuses people that live down there because they will think I live in Midlothian or I live in Venus. No, you actually live in Grand Prairie. It's just we don't have a post office down there. That's why, for example, people that live on the Lake Ridge subdivision on the Grand Prairie side of Cedar Hill actually live in Grand Prairie, but their zip code and address says Cedar Hill.
Wow.
And it gets so confusing to explain that to people. But I'm like, no, you live in Grand Prairie. It's just you have a Cedar Hill address.
So what is the benefit of doing something that way? Like, why would y'all call it Goodland? Why don't you just call it Grand Prairie?
We didn't call it Goodland. The developers, since it wasn't annexed to the city, the developers are able to call it any neighbor. Like for example, Miralagos, that's the name of the neighborhood. Grand Peninsula, name of the neighborhood. Westchester, that's the name of the neighborhood. It's within the city of Grand Prairie, but that's the name of the neighborhood. So Goodland is just the name of the neighborhood, the community. That's the name of it. It's called Goodland. And since it's not annexed, since it's an unincorporated community and it's not annexed into the city, they can do that.
So that's how you're able to actually annex it, because it's not annexed.
We're able to annex it because it's part of our ETJ.
Okay.
And it became part of our ETJ back in the 90s.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So is it, like right now, is it county?
Yes.
Okay.
But parts of it has been annexed, but the majority has not.
And that is why county judges matter.
County judges,
yes.
County courts,
yes,
all of that matter because they all are playing a part.
Yes.
And the people that live out there in Goodland right now, they're a lot of I'm trying to be careful. I want to make sure I say this correctly. They are partly being serviced by the county in regards to police, fire. We're building a fire station down near 287 and 360 near the Greenway Trails and Prairie Ridge neighborhoods. But those have already been annexed to the city. Those are already part of the Grand Prairie. But people that further live in the Goodland area have not been fully annexed to the city, so they're not paying city property taxes
So
yet.
there's actual people that live there already.
I know people that bought homes last year.
And how are they feeling about all this?
They think they live in Venus or Midlothian. They don't know that they live in Grand Prairie. They think they live in Venus or Midlothian.
So what school district are they a part of?
Venus or Midlothian ISD.
That's so interesting.
The shape of our city and
weird.
location makes it so hard to explain and understand. But
you're a very good example of that. Because you grew up in Grand Prairie, but you were in Arlington ISD.
Arlington ISD.
Yeah.
So we got don't even worry about the Goodland area. We have we have Grand Prairie ISD, we have Arlington ISD, we have Mansfield ISD, we have Cedar Hill ISD for those that live on that Cedar Hill portion of the Grand Prairie portion of Lake Ridge. We have Irving ISD.
Do we?
Far north.
Oh my goodness.
We also have parts of our city, which is, to me, is weird. Some kids that go to Dallas ISD. Now let's add Midlothian, because we have Midlothian ISD right now for those that live in Greenway Trails and Prairie Ridge, and eventually we'll have Venus ISD.
This is why your county assessors are important, because, and this is why you can live in a city and be charged property taxes in a city, but you could be charged school district taxes in a different ISD.
Yes.
Because it's all about where your address, what you're serviced by that address. So like if you are in unannexed land that is not city but it's county, you would be charged county property taxes but not city property taxes. So like if there's parts of Midlothian that are like this, that's the benefit of living there, because your property taxes are going to be less because you don't have as many taxing authorities that are taxing your property.
But then there's an issue though, because sometimes, depending on your area, 'cause I have a friend that serves on a council in Collin County, and they are going to court with the county because they say the county is not, they're providing services to people that live in the unincorporated area, but those folks aren't paying taxes to the city. So they're like, why are we providing you with police and fire where you aren't paying taxes and the county's not reimbursing us? So then you have that political issue, which is why it's important to vote for all levels of government.
It is.
Because this is literally a political issue. Do we service people that live just outside of our quote-unquote city limits, but if they have a fire, do we not respond to that fire?
It's a very good question.
It now becomes an ethical question, ethical conundrum. are we only going to respond to people that pay taxes? But then those that are paying taxes, like, why am I paying taxes if you're going to go and service someone that's not?
Exactly. And I think that this question is going to start to come up with like school vouchers and stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, if my money is just going to wherever, like that's going to be a question I think is going to come up logistically. But like, you're right about all levels, because Tarrant County College, Dallas County College, if you live in a Dallas County or Tarrant County, that's part of what you're paying your county taxes for.
Exactly.
But you can be a student that goes to any of those schools.
Yeah.
So, but there's people that get elected just for that reason.
Do you want to talk about vouchers?
Sure.
Ooh,
yeah, let's talk about it. I'm down.
I love this conversation. So do you want to brief them on what vouchers are, what's going on?
So Grand Prairie is also going to be a little bit interesting to this conversation, because we have had an open school district for a while. Not every city has an open school district. And when we talk about open school district, Dr. Hull, in her innovative brilliance, which I think that she was amazing at doing this, she said, listen, we want that. Used to, whenever I was a kid, if you paid, like if I lived in Westchester, there was a school that was zoned my school, and I could go to that school. Now, you could maybe be a transfer student and go to a different school, but for the most part, you went to your local school. I went to Zavala. I lived right in that area outside of Zavala. So going through my entire school, I went to the school that was zoned my school. So you live next to the students that you typically went to school with. So people on my street, we all went to the same school. Now, Dr. Hull said, listen, we want, regardless of if you live on the north side, south side, doesn't matter. If you want to go to a certain type of school, we want you to be able to have that right to go to that school. Now, she did that because charter schools became very big deal. And whenever I was in school, charter schools they existed, but they weren't really considered. It wasn't a competitive. There was no competition whatsoever to like an ISD school, but they were still public schools, meaning that they still got public school dollars. It wasn't a private school where you had to pay additional tuition to go there. But Dr. Hull was like, listen, we need to be able to compete with all these charter schools. So what she did was she created academies, and she created like DeBisky Career High School and things like that. And what she did was she made those schools more competitive, and it made them more specialized. So like if I wanted to skip all the extracurriculars, I didn't care about band, I didn't care about sports, I wanted to go get a business degree. She made it to where I could go to that school regardless of where I lived. I could go to DeBisky. And you didn't even have to live in the city of Grand Prairie. So, but not all cities have functioned that way. So what vouchers are an extension of that. So basically what they're saying is, and correct me, for what I'm saying that's wrong, charter schools and ISDs are all public school dollars. The difference between like an ISD school board member and a charter school board member is that an ISD is able to be a taxing entity on the people that they are in charge, that elect them. So because you represent me as my city councilman, I get to elect you because you're representing me because you are able to tax my property. Charter schools does not function that way. So charter school board, even though they receive public school dollars, they're not able to tax any property owners, but they are also open enrollment. So you can go, it doesn't matter really where you go or you live, you can go to a charter school, even if you have to drive clear across the Metroplex, which some people do.
But you do have to be accepted.
You do have to be accepted, and there's certain criteria, and charter schools can be a lot more specific in what their goals are. You can have like a STEM charter school that their whole goal is just to be science, technology, all that stuff. What vouchers, but the way that funding works is every school gets paid by a student sitting in that seat.
Per pupil allotment.
That's correct. So that's why you have truancy officers. That's why you have all these people that are like, you need to go to school, because if that student is not there, we don't get paid for that student.
Yeah.
But the money goes to the school, the money does not go to the student. Vouchers is basically saying we want the money to follow the student, not go to the school. So what they'll say is, and ISDs get more per pupil than a charter school gets per pupil. So like, I don't know, let's just say for easy math, they get $10,000 a year for a student. A charter school might get $7,000 a year for a student. A voucher is going to be that student gets $7,000 whether they go to a public school or not. They can go to that money can go to anywhere they want it to go. If they want it to go to a homeschool program, it can. If they want it to go to a private school, it can. So let's say that I wanted to send my child to a private school and I get $7,000 from the state or from the state funds. I can make up the difference myself personally. That's what vouchers is. Tell me if I've missed anything.
No, I think you summed it up very well. And my problem with vouchers is that with a voucher system, we can take public tax dollars and use it to fund private education.
Yes, you can.
And my problem with that is that private schools can reject students. Mm-hmm. Private schools can decide who they take.
Private schools are also not privy to, they don't have to take the STAR test. Mm-hmm. They don't have to do any of that state testing.
There's so much regulation that public schools have to all follow that private schools don't.
Right.
And I look at it like this. If I have a physically disabled or a mentally disabled child, a private school can tell me, no, we're not going to take it. But you're using my tax dollars to partially, not fully, but to partially fund your school.
And now you're getting into the logistics I'm talking about, where people are going to start to figure out, like, wait a second, how does this really work? Mm-hmm. And
to me, it's a big problem because long term, and keep in mind, I am biased. I'm a progressive, at least mostly on the economic side. I'm socially progressive as well to an extent, but.
And you're also city council, so his opinion about this is he's not a school board member.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I'm biased, but I'm biased because I don't want public tax dollars going to private institutions unless those private institutions will say, okay, we'll take all the students. And my own opinion is long term, this is a way that school, that is... That's how I look at it. Long term, it's going to hurt the public schools because there's going to be less money in the pot to go to public schools. And eventually, everybody will be forced to either go to a really good charter school or a really good private school because the public schools will be dilapidated due to a lack of funding. I've always told people, if we want to fix our schools, we need to invest in them. We need to invest in our schools. We need to put money towards our schools. Yeah. Because the public schools serve everybody. Even this $8,000 voucher plan that they have is not going to fund a child's full tuition for a private school. It's going to be partially. And who's going to benefit from it the most? People that are already going to private schools. Those that are trying to go to those private schools will not have enough money to fund their tuition. So it's really just it's a subsidy for families that are able to afford private education already.
I wish that more superintendents were as innovative as Dr. Hull was on this issue, because I feel like she saw the writing on the wall. And, I had my issues with stuff then too, but I will say because what she realized was that public schools still needed to remain competitive.
They do.
And if they do not remain competitive, they're never going to get better. It's just like criticism. It's like, we want to support our public schools, but there still needs to be some type of, not criticism, but that's what the open market does. Is it's like, listen, this school is not doing well. Mm-hmm. I don't want my kid going there. So either you can, fix it and make it more competitive, or it's just going to fall apart and no longer be a thing. And I think that that's what I like about this kind of system. But to your point, one of the biggest drawbacks of charters, and my child goes to a charter, is if you need special accommodations for your student, that's not where the resources are. The resources are in the ISDs. So if you have a SPED student that needs special accommodations to take a test, it's going to be a lot harder to come by at a charter than it is, or even at a private school, than it's going to be at an ISD. So they have their place. Everything has its place, right? Mm-hmm. And as a parent, I want to be able to say, I want to send my child to a school that, number one, that's going to benefit them for their talents.
Yeah.
I love the academy system. I love that, and I also love that Dr. Hull recognized that not all students go to college, and we still need trade schools.
I'm with you 1,000,000% on that.
If I see more trade schools come out of this, I'll be a happy camper, because I feel like we are really in a bind. Like, as a realtor, I will tell you, it is hard to find a plumber. It is hard to find an electrician. It is hard to find people that work on pipes. It's hard to find people that do all of these skilled labor jobs
that we need.
And COVID really retired a lot of people. And so we need more appraisers. We need inspectors. That's all part of the real estate industry. But you have to have credit hours to go do all those things. I would love to see Grand Prairie have like a real estate tract where by the time that you graduate and you're 18 years old, you can be an inspector. Because part of the issue with trades is you have to be an apprentice for a lot of those times, and that is not paid typically. Mm-hmm. So by the time you become an adult and you have kids, it's really hard to switch into a career like that. Like to be an appraiser and inspector, I think it's like a year's worth of apprenticeship hours. So that is one thing that I think that public high schools could do very, very well. So I don't know. I feel like Grand Prairie does that very, very well.
Yeah, but we need to do more.
We do.
We definitely do. I love that you say that because not everyone needs to go to college. No, college is a track, but there's many other tracks to get there as well. Yeah. And trade schools need to be supported more. We need to invest more in that because, like you said, we need electricians, we need plumbers, we need appraisers. We need mechanics. Because the issue is people don't think about this long term. The less we have leads to higher prices. The less competition you have in the market, if you have less appraisers, if you have less plumbers, if you have less electricians, those that still remain can charge you hand over fist.
That's very true.
And an arm and a leg, and you have to pay it because you need this. These are necessities for our society. So you're 100% right. This is something that we have to do. And that's kind of what disappoints me on the federal and state level. There's so much bickering about silly politics that doesn't impact people's lives.
That's correct.
Then literally taking some of that surplus money that we have and investing it in education and mandating these school districts, hey, we need you to create programs that focus on these important pathways, these CTE pathways. That's what we need.
Have you done a tour of like all these high schools in our city?
Only a few of them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It is unbelievable. You've been to Dubisky, I assume.
Yes.
Have you been to, like, what are some of the other ones that you visited?
I've been to GP,
have you seen their nursing?
I have not, because I went a few times to speak to students, and I'll go to some of the classes, and I've done like career days, but I have not went through all their programs yet.
One of the things I wanted to do on this show, I need to call some of the school board members that were going to show me around. I wanted them to tour me around some of these because I don't think that people understand the level of some of these programs in our city. It is unbelievable. When I say like career and technology, in Arlington, they have basically there's a school where they bus students in.
Dan Dipert, I think.
Yes, yeah. And they get like half a day maybe. That is not how Grand Prairie ISD does it. Like if you like the veterinary school, if you go to South, there's an entire clinic. It's a vet clinic, and you can actually bring your pet there, and they get to work as though they are a part of this program. That is unbelievable. The nursing program at Grand Prairie High School, they've got like, I say dummies, it's a terrible word, but it's like these are robotic dummies that simulate all kinds of different medical emergencies. Wow. I don't know how much this costs, but like some of these educators are very good at finding money. They're very good at finding grants. That's how Adams became a technology academy, because one of them was like, hey, we can get like $3 million if we go into this gaming thing. And a lot of the students love to do gaming there. So he's like, maybe we could just do that.
That's brilliant.
Exactly. That kind of stuff is what we need. We need educators to think outside of the box like that. And I love that Grand Prairie does those things. Even Dubisky, like they have a printing area. You can go get signs printed. You can go, actually, they really work on that kind of like hands-on real world, it's really, really good. But I don't know. When people get their property tax bill, but they see that these are the kinds of facilities that kids are getting, and that they're graduating for free with associate's degrees and with certifications and stuff, they're a lot more willing to pay their tax dollars. I don't know how that's going to affect it with vouchers. It is something that I don't know that anybody really knows. I don't know if they logistically realize how that's all going to work.
If you look at other states like Arizona, for example, that experiments and has a voucher system right now, it just destroys their public schools over time and requires families that are already struggling to find cash to put their kids in good private schools, or if they get lucky, get accepted into good charter schools.
Why do you think that public schools have such a hard time like innovating and keeping up with the market?
Lack of funds.
Do you think?
A lot of them, because this is why I'll tell you this. If you go to Highland Park, if you go to South Lake Carroll, if you go to schools in Frisco, if you go to schools in very wealthy communities, there's a difference, a significant difference, and a lot of it is funding. A lot of it is funding. I'm a real like political analyst, and I always tell people, if I wanted to improve a community that dealt with a lot of economic and financial strife, 3 things I would invest in. Number 1, infrastructure. Improve the roads, improve the streets, make sure that people have light, they have electricity, they have just basic amenities, and also it will lead to businesses coming there to invest.
Sure.
If we don't have roads, why would I set up a business over here, and why would I employ people? I can't employ people if I don't have a business, and I won't invest money in my business in an area that has terrible roads and terrible access points. Number 2, security. I am not going to want to live in a community that's not safe, and I'm not going to want to invest my money in an area that's not safe, to where my shop gets broken into, my business gets broken into, or whatever, my home gets broken into.
Sure.
And if I call the cops don't come. You need security. So you need an infrastructure, security. Number 3, investment in education. You want an educated constituency. You want an educated citizenry, because an educated citizenry will climb the ladders of economic mobility and will pour money back. They'll bring money back into their community, and they'll get better jobs, and they'll be qualified for some of those jobs for those businesses that are coming into your community. So those are the 3 major things. But you have to have the vision and see it that way.
And the money that they get has to go to the right place.
The money has to go to the right places, and there needs to be transparency and honesty involved in all that.
Yeah, it's funny because like if you look at like a city, I don't know, like that, you can tell where the money in that city, in that public education system, is what's important to them. When you see, a $45 million football stadium, and it's like, clearly sports is important to this district. Can these students read? Are they literate? Like, how are they doing with, not even state testing, I care less about all that. I'm talking about like, when they graduate, do they have a marketable skill? Can they know how to read? Do they do math? Can they do these basic things? Or do they just know how to play football and be on the band and all that stuff, which is great. Extracurriculars is very important. But I do think that like, just pouring more money into it that's not being, like, if it's not actually going to educating students, what's the point? You're just, and so, or if you have like one high school like Duncanville, and it's all just an athletic complex.
Or Allen.
Or Allen. Allen is like, oh my gosh, it's crazy.
8,000 students go to one school.
That is crazy.
8,000.
You can't keep students safe that way. The inmates run the asylum.
Yes.
I mean, it's like they know that they're outnumbered, and so I don't know.
But at the same time, their test scores are good. The kids are fairly educated, but at the same time, they live in a fairly economically. Their parents are rich.
They moved there for that reason.
Exactly.
Yes, and so like that is one of the benefits of. And it keeps them competitive. But at one time, all districts are like that.
Exactly.
And if you're not going to keep up with it, and if you're not going to make sure that the infrastructure you do have is being maintained, it's just going to go down the path the same way all the other stuff does.
And that's why good governance is important.
It is.
Earlier today, I was on a call with some folks that are helping us craft our comprehensive plan for our parks and recreation department. And I told them my number 1 thing is this: we have an amazing set of parks in the city. We have dozens of parks, great rec centers. I want to see more in the future. Wonderful. But maintenance and upkeep is number 1.
Right.
Because we can have a good thing.
That's right.
But if we don't protect it and preserve it, it was all for naught.
Yep. And this is why I always tell people bigger is not always better. Bigger's fine if you have the ability. It's like buying a bigger house.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, okay, I want a 4,000 square foot house. Great. Can you maintain a 4,000 square foot house? Because that's going to have 2 water heaters and not just one. It's going to have 2 air conditioning units, not just one. It's going to be more expensive to take care of. That's why you see, you can drive down a street and look at one mansion that's gorgeous and then another mansion that's falling apart because that person had eyes bigger than what they could actually take care of.
You sound like my mom and my dad. That's something they would say. That's something that they would say. He bit off more than he could chew.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, live within your means, but it's the same thing with anything.
Yeah.
You know, you can have all these beautiful, you know, but do you have things to sustain it? That's the question. And do you have people that are going to run it that are going to constantly bring more people? You know, and so, and that's some of the problems sometimes with, like, you know, school districts that build these huge buildings. Just realize, what are you going to do with it if you can't sustain that anymore?
Exactly.
Are you going to knock it down? Like, what are you going to do? So it's interesting to think about. But there's something I wanted to go back to. You said earlier, you were talking about term limits. No, you weren't talking about term limits. You were talking about your new term started and it's three years long. I want to get your opinion on this because I hear a lot of people that talk about term limits. Arlington has term limits that are 2 years long. Do you know this?
They changed recently. They're now 3-year terms.
Okay, so I want to talk about this because I think it's something that people. How much time do you have?
Let's talk.
Okay, so when one of the commissions or committees that I served on with Arlington was we talked to people that were running for city government, so that we could provide our suggestions about what we thought that other realtors might want to, you know, vote for. A lot of ours had to do with property rights. How do you feel about property rights? How do you feel about now I can't even think of it. When you kick people out of their house. Oh my gosh, why can't I think of that word?
Evictions?
Not evictions. Jerry Jones, when they built the stadium.
Oh, eminent domain.
Eminent domain, thank you. Do you even know what that is? Like, how do you feel about all this kind of stuff? And one of the things that we figured out was they had 2-year term limits because they reduced them. And they could only run for 3 terms in a row. That's 6 years, okay? Finance, all this stuff that y'all have to learn how to do is very difficult to learn. So what we were figuring out was they were becoming elected as city councilmen. The first year is basically learning how to do your job. The second year, if you want to run again, you have to now campaign to get elected again. In the process of doing that, the city government itself, the people that were paid, were really the ones making a lot of these decisions. And so I'm glad to hear that they changed it. I imagine that they were running into a lot of problems. But how do you feel about all that, term limits and, you know?
Back when I was in college, and this is the beautiful part about going
You went to UTA, by the way.
Went to UTA. Yeah. I'm a Maverick, Mav up. But Dr. Dean, big shout out to her because I'm about to say something that she taught me back in college. She's actually the dean of the political science department now, but love the lady, Dr. Rebecca Dean. So in college, I was someone that supported term limits. And I talked to my professor, Dr. Dean, about it. And she told me, Junior, this is why I will never support term limits. She said, you lose institutional knowledge with term limits. And eventually, regardless of the level of government, if it's state, federal, county, city, the people that are going to run the government are going to be the bureaucrats. It's going to be the staff. Because people are being cycled in and cycled out so much that the knowledge is not transferred. And the inmates are under the asylum, essentially. So that changed my perspective. And when I came on the city council, I told them straight up, I said, guys, I don't support term limits. I look at it like this. Everybody has a term limit. It's called re-election. When voters come and vote, voters have the right to remove me and put someone else in or keep me and allow me to keep serving. And I view it now, since I graduated from college, as very undemocratic. I don't think in a democracy you should be telling a voter, hey, I know you like this guy. I know he's helped your community. I know he's helped the city for so long that you can't vote for him no more because he's too popular. Let the voters make that decision.
Yeah.
If a voter wants to keep someone there for 100 years, that's their democratic right. That when they go to the ballot box and they cast their secret ballot, that's their right. And that's how I feel about it on all levels of government now.
Yeah.
Even, it sounds crazy, even the presidency. I don't support term limits on any level because
that's interesting.
And the reason is because I want voters to make their decision. With term limits, what we're telling people is that, hey, we can't beat this guy, so we're going to remove him.
Yeah, it's funny because I changed my opinion too, and it was because of City of Arlington. Like, it was when I saw this doesn't matter. Like, this is what I figured out. I was like, not only did they have term limits, they had very limited term time frames. Yeah. So they could only do 3 times, and then they could do 2 years. And I realized, and when you could notice a difference between try getting something approved in the City of Arlington versus getting one approved in Grand Prairie.
Exactly.
It was a lot easier in Grand Prairie. And matter of fact, as a real estate agent, we were known as a city of being a lot easier to deal with and better to deal with if you're going to try to build something or do something here than any of the other cities around us, especially in Arlington. And I was like, this is exactly because their elected officials don't really mean that much. Because they're always rotating.
It's staff that's running the show.
It is. And no offense to anybody that's a city, if you're an employee of the city, I have a lot of friends that are employees of the city. There's a reason we have elected officials. They're supposed to be our representatives. If I call and I say, hey, person that gets paid $100,000 a year, I have a complaint, what do they care? They're okay, you have a complaint. But with an elected official, if I call and say, I elected you, I have a complaint.
That's public pressure.
It's public pressure. And there has to be public pressure on their bureaucracy. So I wish that people understood that more. Because term limits seem like such a good idea.
It sounds so good.
It sounds so good. And it's like, yeah, of course, there's going to be pros and cons to each thing. But you're right. The thing about city government is when you have somebody... You don't want to hurt feelings. A lot of us, the thing about city government is you grow up with a lot of these people. You've known people for a long time. You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings by running against them, But that's when you have to have adults in the situation. And so...
People have to remove feelings from politics.
Say it again.
People have to remove feelings from politics. And, I mean... This is why it makes it easy for me to do the work that I do. 'Cause I work as a consultant too.
Is that your day job?
It's my day job, yeah. So a political consultant. And I tell them, hey, I may like what happened on November 5th. I may not like the results, but I respect it. And I will never go and criticize people that supported a candidate that didn't support the candidate I wanted.
And we have a lot of people that have done that.
People do it, and it's terrible because I tell them, number one, you're not bringing anybody to your side by attacking and demonizing those that voted for someone you didn't want them to vote for. And number two, they have a right to support the candidate that they wanted to choose. If you want them to support yours, run a candidate that will appeal to them or run on issues that will appeal to them. And I think that's what's helped me be successful because anything I've ever done that failed, I look inward. What can I do to improve? I don't go looking to blame other people, even if I don't feel like it's my fault. I still understand that for me to progress and do good work here, I got to look inside and find a way to improve, even if it's 1% or it's 100%. And that's what we need. Remove personal feelings from politics. Politics doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't. It's about votes. You got the votes to win. If you don't, you better find those votes.
The interesting thing about so me as a voter, I have how many different elected officials that I could vote for in any given election?
Dozens.
Okay, exactly, dozens, probably more than that. So let's say that my state representative, well, let's just say, okay, so we'll take you for an example. Your constituency is the entire Grand Prairie, the city of Grand Prairie. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, non-voters, people from all races, religions, languages, all this stuff, that is your constituency. So what I wish that elected officials understood, and we don't have a whole lot of partisan politics in our city, but it happens in other places.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You could have... you say, I'm progressive, I'm a Democrat. You have Republicans as your constituents.
Yeah.
So when you, as an elected official, go and you badmouth them, you're badmouthing the people that you're elected to represent, whether you agree with them or not. And I think that a lot of people have forgotten that.
Because they have made politics a team game.
Yeah.
And like either you're on my team or you're not on my team.
Or they're appealing to people on social media and not to their constituency.
I tell them, like, guys, in any election, your goal should be to bring people to your side. It should not be to demonize or push anybody away. Dude, when I ran in 2021, I won by 183 votes. It was a very close election, but I didn't win just because Democrats voted for me or independents voted for me. I needed Republicans to vote for me too. You need everybody. You need black, white, Hispanic, Asian. You need Democrat, Republican, independent. Same thing this year. I can't win just by one political party or another political party. And this is nonpartisan, so it's very different. But that's how I look at government. My goal is to serve everybody and make everyone's life a little bit better every single day. And your partisan affiliation doesn't matter to me because you want your kids to go to good schools. You want to live in a safe, secure neighborhood, and you want to live in a country that's progressing. We all want the same things generally.
I have a question for you as a poli-sci major. Why do you think we vote on judges based on Democrat and Republican? Is there a reason for that?
In certain states, they understand that if you don't have partisan, because not all states, some states have nonpartisan judges.
They do? Okay,
yeah.
interesting.
Like in North Carolina, I think they have, or did they change? I think they did change. But most states have partisan because if you don't have the partisan markers, the quote-unquote wrong people can get elected.
What does that mean?
If you are in Texas and it's strictly nonpartisan, many Democrats will get elected to the state Supreme Court, for example, or state court of appeals, because voters just wouldn't know. The average voter does not do deep investigation to find out the beliefs and policy prescriptions that judges support. Like things that, is this judge more pro-business and on this issue or more pro-work on this, or what is their opinion on these different issues? Voters are not going to study it.
But is that a judge's place?
The issue is, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, judges have political beliefs, and their beliefs are translated onto the court.
So is the idea just to be outright with it so that you know? I've just always been curious. I don't understand why. I was like, if a judge is
not a county, not like Judge Jenkins or I forgot the guy in Tarrant County.
Well, because they don't actually oversee any type of cases.
Yeah, we're talking about courts. Yeah,
yes,
like
courts. Family court.
It's because partisan. They want to have partisan markers, so you vote for the right judge.
That's interesting.
Politics. I'll tell you, politics is in everything. That's why the states that have nonpartisan judges, even there are a few Democratic states that have nonpartisan judges where Republicans get elected on a regular basis because voters don't know. They just vote for who they think may be the best with the minimal information that they have.
Because and you don't ever see, it's very rare that you've ever seen anybody politicking for a judgeship. Although it's very interesting. I pay attention to a lot of that stuff. Usually it's just one judge running for one position.
In Dallas County.
In Dallas County,
because
it's
Dallas
very much.
Dallas County is a specific, votes for a specific party. I live on the Tarrant County side. All the judges that run countywide in Tarrant County are Republicans. I mean, that win are Republicans.
That's so interesting.
So, like, when I voted in this election, there was like 10 different judicial races that had no opponent.
Same thing for me, but on the Dallas County side. That's so interesting. I don't know how I feel about that.
That's why there's been a push to make city governments partisan.
How do you feel about that?
I'm against it.
I am too.
But there's been a push from some people in the state house to make city governments partisan. But it's because they want that kind of politics to enter every level of government. Imagine what's going to happen when they make, if God forbid it happens, but if they made school boards and city councils partisan.
Well, and there's people that will run on that
solely.
Exactly.
And they'll lose focus on making sure that streets are paved, maintenance is on the streets. They'll forget that trash got to get picked up and recycle got to get picked. Just the basics will be forgotten because it'll be strictly, are you on this side or are you on this side? And if you're on this side, I don't want you because I'm on that side.
So what about, like, was that something that was surprising to you? That, like, I mean, you kind of knew more because you were a poli-sci major, but like going into city government, how little that mattered?
To an extent, because like in college, we study just state, federal, and some county and judicial races. But when I was running for council, I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. And the reason I knew it didn't matter is because for the average voter, if you spoke about issues that they cared about, you spoke about improving our infrastructure, supporting our public safety, basic things, expanding some services that we have in the city, they're like, I can ride with you. Cool. They will ask but some voters will ask you, what party do you affiliate with? And they'll literally say, hey, I'm not going to vote for you because you're not with my party, or I'm definitely going to vote for you because you're with my party.
And some of that is because it's overt. They don't want overt politics in local city election. They just want exactly what you said. Okay, I don't care how you feel about this particular topic. Can you vote to get my pothole fixed in front of my house?
Exactly.
That doesn't matter, but it's like, are you focused on that as a politician? So like, what is your goal? Like, what is your long-term goal?
I want to keep on serving.
Where?
Wherever God will put me.
Okay. Do you have any like goals personally?
I can't be president because I was born in Nigeria. I moved here when I was 2, so I'm a naturalized citizen. So no presidency. Okay,
so your parents are Nigerian. How'd they feel about you going into politics?
So my freshman year, I'm at UTA doing my orientation in the summer. And my dad and mom were really pushing me, the Nigerian immigrant mindset, go and become a doctor. Go be a doctor. Or if you're not going to be a doctor, be a lawyer.
I've spoken to a lot of Nigerian parents, so this is not surprising to me. I was actually, when I saw that you were running, I was like, I wonder how his parents feel about that.
So they were pushing. So I came back from orientation. I told my dad and my mom, I said, I'm not doing this biology major crap. I said, I'm going to do poli-sci. My dad said, okay, no problem. Just make sure you go to law school.
Become an attorney.
Just make sure you go to law school. I said, all right, deal. So whenever I decided I wanted to run for council, I told my parents, I asked them, their thoughts, and they said, do it. No problem. They supported me. But I told them this. I said, hey, if I win this, I ain't going to law school. And my dad was like, that's going to be a problem. I was like, I'm telling you right now, if I win this, I ain't going to law school. Because I never wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to serve in government because I love the work. So my parents have been super supportive. They're so proud. And it's a blessing. It's a big blessing to win an election while your parents are alive.
Oh, I bet.
It's a big blessing. It's something I don't take for granted.
Yeah.
I love my family.
Especially as an immigrant, child of immigrants.
It's a humongous blessing.
Yeah.
So that's why I try to make them proud because they work their butts off to give me and my siblings the life that we have.
I was going to ask you if you had any siblings.
Yep. I have 2 younger brothers and a baby sister. Well, she's not a baby anymore. It kind of hurts me to say that. She's 18. She's a freshman at TCC.
Aww.
So like, and when she was born, I was like, what, 7? So I'm like 7 years older than her. So I've seen her grow up. My younger brother, he's like a year and a half younger than me, and my younger brother's like 3-4 years younger than me. So I saw them grow up, but we're so much closer in age. My sister, I'm 7 years older than her. So I watched her grow up. Like, I remember when she was born. I remember when they brought her home. I remember. I've seen her. So seeing her now that she's 18 and is in college, it's bittersweet.
Yeah.
And she's she's a woman now. She's not a little girl.
I know. My daughter's 14. I see it every day.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
I'm telling you, it hurts a little bit.
It does. I mean, it's cool like to watch them become an adult and to get, but it's hard. I realize my time with her living in my house is becoming very limited, which is a good and a bad thing,
It's getting shorter, but she's your baby.
It is,
she's your baby, so.
But the reason I ask that is because I will tell you this: there's a lot of people in the city that really like having you on our city council, but we know that you're destined for greater things.
I hear this a lot. I hear this a lot. So
I mean, not to say that city council is not great things. It is. It's very important, but. That's why I ask you.
No, it's a great question. And I'll never lie to you and tell you that I don't want to run for something later, but I am so grateful to be where I am right now. Jenna, every day I wake up, say my prayers, I thank God, I'm living a freaking dream. I get paid to be a political consultant, work on campaigns.
So that's what you're doing.
How you doing? I see a constituent. but that's what I do for work. But then I get to serve. I get to make a difference, and I get to learn. Like, I'm learning every single day. I'm growing not just as a man, but as a leader. I'm gaining valuable skills that are helping me in my life as a young man. I'm living a dream. So if God keeps me here forever, wonderful. If God has me serve at another level, wonderful. Jen, I've already won. That's how I look at it. I've already won. Like, I am so grateful. That's why I'm not rushing anything. I've had people push me, trying to get me to do this and do that. I said, you go do it.
I imagine you get that a lot.
I tell them, you go run for that. I'm enjoying the work I'm doing right now, and no one is gonna push me to do anything else until I'm ready to do that.
Okay, I have another question for you, because I think this is really important. Who have you identified any young people that you feel like you could teach or mentor to take your spot?
No. But what I have done is I advise, I provide support, and I tell them, whatever you need, I'm here. I have not found any young person yet that could run and do the work, but I try to. For example, I go to the schools. I go to the high schools. I go to UTA. I go to the community colleges. I speak to the classes. I go to TCU. My bad. I go to TCU from time to time and speak to these classes and exchange cards and let them know I'm here. If I can ever be supportive of you, if I can ever help you. I haven't found any young person yet that will take my spot. But I don't look at it as it has to be a young person.
Right.
It can be anybody that cares about the city. But I would love to see more young people get involved, regardless if that's running for office, or maybe that's you just voting, or you coming to a council meeting, which I've seen some come to the council meetings and ask me questions afterwards about how everything's going. So I'm happy about that. But I have not yet found a young person to take my spot.
I call it the Moses Joshua effect. It's like when Moses, when he passed off the torch to Joshua and he mentored him. And I'm like, we have to have the people that are learning that are going to find the next generation and pull them up. Yeah. And like say, hey, you know what? You have a real knack for this. You have a real talent for this. And maybe this is something you ought to consider, but you're right. It doesn't have to be a younger person.
But my goal is to bring people with me. I just don't know if it's going to be that quick because sometimes I have to really think, and I have to thank God. My journey to be doing what I'm doing right now is truly it's rare. It's not as common. So even when I think that someone may have the skill set or have the heart, they gotta really believe that themselves.
That's true.
You have to believe it yourself. And I know people that say, hey, I'm just not ready. I want to make my money first. I want to, get established in my career first. Then I'll consider. I'm like, do what makes sense for you. But I think you have the heart to serve. But do you believe that?
That's true.
You gotta believe it yourself. I can't believe it more than you do.
That's true. That's very true. But what you're doing is awesome.
Thank you.
I love that. So I'm glad that you came and talked to me. This
is fun, and you're an amazing person in our community. And y'all don't know this, but the way we met was back in March of 2021 when I was first running. I joined the the Metro Tex Board of Realtors for their questionnaire and interview. Yep. And that's where I met Jenna. I didn't know she lived in Grand Prairie.
It was your first time.
It was my first March of 2021.
Was it 2021?
March of 2021, yeah.
So the other thing that I did was I think that I had y'all on, everybody that ran for races locally, I gave y'all some questionnaires. Yep. And I gave y'all pre-printed, and I gave y'all a chance to come on and just answer them. And so that's the only conversation that I got to have really. I didn't get to have a conversation with you at that point. I was trying to give everybody a chance as much as possible to talk.
But you remember what you told me? You told me, you said, Junior, I'm just grateful that our city has a young man like you that's willing to run. Because you didn't think I could win. But you were just grateful that...
Well, I didn't know who you were.
No, but what I'm saying is that even though I'm a young man, and there was 5 other people in the race. The point I'm making is that you still, even though you still were skeptical, you encouraged me. Which I found, I was grateful for the encouragement. Because there was people telling you, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be running. And all things you're here. So having you just be someone that grew up in this community, has seen the things you've seen, knows the people that you know, just to encourage and be kind, I appreciated it. So
were you one of the youngest people to be on city council?
Youngest ever.
That's Because you were how old at the time when you first ran?
22 when I got elected. I started running at 21. I turned 22 March 14, 2021, and won June 5th, 2021.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
It is. It's nice. It's so nice to see, and it really has been delightful to watch all the things that you do. And I'm telling you, people talk about you all the time in great ways.
Well, I'm trying.
No, it's true. Like, I go, man, like, I'll say to somebody, I'm like, man, he's just really impressive. Like, look, he's doing this other thing. He's doing this other thing. You have a lot of talent. You talk to people. And I love that what you said earlier about you reach out to try to solicit that feedback. There's not very many people that do that. And it's good that you do, because you can tell that you're in line with like where people are. Your response to like the election, as an example, what it is it signifies how you because you talk to people of all kinds of different political backgrounds and demographics and everything. And now you got to be like that. If you're gonna be an at-large position in a city, you have to be on board with what everybody's feeling, you know? And just be kind to people. Absolutely. That's the biggest thing. And be willing to listen. Be willing to listen and have respect. Yes. And I guess I don't want to keep filibustering because we'll be talking forever. Yeah. And well, you're going to come on again because like I'm going to start doing this more frequently. I love it. But there's a point I want to make. I was blessed to be chosen to do the Archer Center Fellowship Program my senior year of college, right before I ran for council. And it basically, all the UT system schools in Texas will send 5 to 7 students from their campus to DC to do an internship program. And while I was there, there's about 45 of us. 60% were Democrats, 35% were Republicans, 5% were independents. And some of my Democratic friends did not want to speak to the Republicans on the internship. And I told them this: you cannot say you want to work in government, you want to work in politics, and not be willing to have respect and be willing to talk to someone that disagrees with you. I said, I'm friends with all the people here. I don't care what party you belong to. I'm going to be your friends, and I want to learn from you why you think the way you think and see where we have common ground and use your arguments to create rebuttals. Because if we live in the same echo chamber and only listen to people that support our perspective and point of view, we can't grow. I always tell people, go into spaces where you're uncomfortable, take hard questions, and have those difficult conversations. I have been, for my whole life, I've always been against this idea that you should not talk about religion and politics. I agree. Why not? Yes. Let's talk about it. Yes. Let's talk about it. If you are so sure about how you feel about things, you should be able to have those conversations. But at the same time, you said something earlier when we were talking about term limits. Your opinion changed. Yeah. Because someone made a better argument. 100%. I was like, wow, that makes sense. Absolutely. And I tell people this all the time. Just have the conversation. Yes. Have the conversation. You don't got to agree. You can agree to disagree. That's right. But have the conversation, because you never know who can teach you something. And it's like, there was a policy point, and I don't want to go too deep into it, that I had supported. And a Republican guy came to me and said, I would support this, but y'all would have to fix it this way. And I said, wait, that makes sense. If we added this amendment to this issue, it would be more palatable to a lot more people. Mm-hmm. And it would let us get the votes to accomplish it. Yeah. But had I been someone who's like, nah, you're on a different side of the aisle than me, I can't listen to you, I would have lost the privilege to gain this advice that can make my point greater. And I believe that's the beauty of this country. Yep. We all have something to offer. We all have something to give. But are we willing to listen to be able to make those changes? There has been so many positions that I have changed my mind on, especially in the past 4 years. Never thought I would say this. Never thought I would think that. But someone made a better argument. And thank goodness for podcasts, because I think listening to people talk at length on a topic, there's times that I will listen to 10 different podcasts on that topic. Mm-hmm. And I will say, I like what they said on there, but I didn't like what they said on here. They make a better point about that. And I'll come to a consensus that was very different from where I started personally. But it is the being able to change your mind, mm-hmm. being able to alter your idea about what you believe so strongly, or being able to solidify what your idea was to begin with. Like when I talk about, and as a Christian, I read the Bible. I always tell people, the more that you talk about the Bible, the more that you will believe what you believe about the Bible. If I never read the Bible and I don't talk about it, I don't know that I believe that 100%. It's the same way with politics. It's the same way with anything. So it's like, if you're sure, then go have a conversation with someone who's willing to talk to you back. And you might come across that maybe your mind is opened a little bit. Maybe that other person is going to be. But the idea that you have to change somebody's mind in one conversation in a 10-minute period of time is unrealistic.
Yeah.
And that's why people don't do it, because they feel like, I should be able to tell you right now how to change your mind. And you should go, oh, that's such a great idea. It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't.
A lot of times these are just seeds that you're planting. And they might grow later, they might not grow later. But having those conversations are really important. And I believe religion and politics is a part of our life, whether we like it or not.
How can we avoid that conversation?
You can, but it's not productive.
Bad. It's not good. It's not good for our society.
No.
I've been so much against that since I've been a kid. I've always said, no, we have to have these conversations. I believe in being uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable allows you to grow. We don't come to the gym to just do the same workout at the same intensity and
Some
expect.
People do.
Well, yeah, they're just trying to maintain. But if you want to grow,
they go to the gym.
They go to the exact point. But if you want to grow, you have to take your body to that next limit. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to push that weight a little bit more or run a little bit faster to be able to improve upon where you came from.
Right.
That's how I look at life. We have to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I agree. And I'm grateful to have you on our city council. I'm glad that you came and talked to me today. And we will do this again for sure.
We sure will. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And it's a great place to come and talk. So if anybody's looking for some place, we will come back here.